My stepfather spent the money I had saved to buy a car on a party while I was away. So I sold his jewelry collection, and now he and my mom want to report me to the police. I never got along with my stepfather, even before this happened, because he already had the habit of taking things that weren't his without permission and even selling them. This happened several times, and my mom would always make excuses for him, saying it wasn't him. And when I had proof it was, she would simply say that he must have had a reason for doing it and that he probably really needed the money. It got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. So I bought a safe and hid it under my bed just to stop him from taking my things. At first, this even led to an argument between me and my mom, as she said it was ridiculous for me to hide things from him because he wasn't a thief. And she even tried to make me get rid of the safe. Of course, I refused. So here's the situation. I'm in college, and throughout this year I've had to wake up really early and take 2 buses to get there because I had some trouble getting a dorm and I won't be able to get one until next year. I couldn't take the routine of waking up so early and dealing with the stress of 2 buses with irregular schedules anymore. So 2 months ago, I decided to save all my salary to buy a car and get rid of this problem. I spent these 2 months without buying any snacks, without going out even once, and not spending a single penny. I managed to save enough money to buy a car, combining that with some savings I already had. I already knew which car I wanted and was just waiting for the weekend to buy it. But on Friday, when I came back home from college, my safe was in the yard, completely destroyed. And of course the money was gone. I kept all the money in that safe because I don't have a bank account and get paid in cash. Even though I was always afraid my stepfather would take the money, I thought he'd never be able to because it was inside the safe. But obviously I was wrong. I entered the house yelling, asking where my money was, and my mom said my stepfather took it as if it was no big deal. I told her that money was for me to buy a car, and she knew that. Then she said my stepfather had been really stressed lately, and she gave him permission to take the money from my safe and go have some fun. And I should be understanding. I told her that I had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day just to get to college on time, that she knew how awful it was and how little sleep I was getting. But she just said if I managed to save for 2 months, I could do it again. I didn't say anything, just went to my room and waited. Every Friday, my mom goes out to visit her friends, so I waited until she left. Then I went downstairs, and since I knew my stepfather kept a jewelry collection, I went straight to their room and sent a picture of the collection to a friend of mine who buys these things. I took just enough to cover the money I lost and sold it to him. That same day, I went and bought my car. When I came back home with the car, both of them were already waiting outside, and as soon as I got out of the car, they started yelling, saying they were going to call the police. I asked what was going on, and they said they knew I had taken the jewelry. I told them it was true, and that if they wanted to report me to the police, they were welcome to do so. But I would also report every time my stepfather took something from me. So maybe that wasn't the best idea. They kept yelling, and since I saw that the situation wasn't going to calm down, I packed everything from my room, put it in the car, and left. I already talked to another friend, and he said I could stay with him until I get my dorm, and he would rent his room for $50, which I really appreciated. But before going there, I came to the police station and am going to report my stepfather and my mom before they report me. They seemed really serious and angry, so I decided to get ahead of it. Once they find out, I definitely won't have any peace. But I don't think I'm in the wrong. After I filed the report, I sat in the car outside the police station, trying to process everything that had happened. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. I was relieved to have finally taken action against my stepfather and my mother's complicity, but at the same time, it was devastating to realize that my own family had pushed me to this point. I decided not to let these emotions overwhelm me. I picked up my phone and called my friend, letting him know I was on my way to his place and thanking him again for taking me in. He sounded genuinely worried about me and said he had a simple, warm dinner waiting for me. And for some reason, that touched me more than anything that had happened that day. I arrived at my friend's house, and he welcomed me with open arms. We talked for a while about the situation, and he assured me that I could stay as long as I needed. I had never realized how alone I felt in that house with my mom and stepfather until I was here, being welcomed by someone who truly cared. For the first time in months, I managed to relax a little and sleep without the constant fear that something of mine would be stolen while I was unaware. But things didn't stop there. 3 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was my mom, and she was hysterical. She started yelling before I could even say anything. "You've ruined everything," she screamed, her voice trembling with rage and despair. She told me my stepfather had been called to give a statement at the police station and was completely furious. He had lost his temper, broken several things at home, and according to her, now wanted to settle the score with me. I felt a chill down my spine hearing that. My mom was telling me that I needed to withdraw the report, that I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I did know. I knew exactly what kind of person my stepfather was, and that was exactly why I wasn't going to give in. I replied with a calmness I didn't even know I had. "Mom, and he stole from me. You took what I worked months to save. If he wants to settle the score, he can do so with the justice system." She started crying, begging, saying that my stepfather was threatening to come after me, that he might do something stupid. Even so, I didn't back down. This time, I was determined not to let both of their cowardice dictate my life. I hung up the call, and for the first time, I felt a strange kind of satisfaction. It was as if I had finally managed to fight back after years of being trampled on. But I knew the battle was far from over. That same day, I talked to my friend who suggested I stay alert and even offer financial help for me to move to another state if necessary. I didn't want to run away, but the offer was comforting. The situation only got more intense when, 2 days later, my friend showed me something on his phone. It was a post in a local Facebook group. My mom had made a post slandering me, saying I had stolen family heirlooms and that I was an ungrateful and dangerous son. She asked for help from acquaintances to support her and even tried to contact me to convince me to come back. Reading that filled me with a rage I could no longer contain. My own mother was publicly lying, twisting the facts to make herself look like the victim and make me look like a monster. I knew she was desperate, but this was simply too much. I wasn't going to let it slide. I decided I was going to expose the truth, not to clear my reputation, but because I was tired of always being the one who had to give in and stay silent. I took my phone and wrote a long post describing everything my stepfather had done over the years, every time he had taken something from me, my mom's excuses, and how, ultimately, they had destroyed my safe and spent all my money. I included photos of the destroyed safe and even screenshots of the conversation with my friend, where I told him I was going to sell the jewelry. I posted it in the same group, and soon there was an uproar. Many people I didn't know started commenting, some supporting me, others criticizing me, but above all, what caught my attention were the comments from relatives I barely had contact with. My uncle, my mom's brother, was one of the first to comment, saying he had always known there was something wrong with her relationship and wasn't surprised. Then, a distant cousin mentioned how she had witnessed my stepfather acting strangely on other occasions. The situation quickly got out of control, and soon the entire neighborhood knew the true story. That's when my stepfather, furious, decided to show up at my friend's house. I was in the room when I heard his voice outside. He was shouting my name, saying he wanted to talk to me. My friend was by my side and told me not to go out, but I knew this was my chance to end this once and for all. I went downstairs and opened the door, and there he was, red with anger, my mom by his side, trying to hold him back. "You're going to pay for this, you ungrateful brat. You humiliated me in front of everyone," he shouted, advancing toward me. But before he could do anything, I raised my phone, showing that I was recording everything. "If you lay a finger on me, this goes straight to the police. And this time, it won't just be a theft report. It'll be for assault too." He stopped, his expression shifting from fury to something between fear and restrained hatred. My mom started crying, begging me to stop, saying I was destroying the family. But I just looked at her and said, "You destroyed our family the moment you chose a side over mine." They stood there, frozen, not knowing what to do, as I walked back into my friend's house and closed the door. In the following days, I received messages from several relatives, some supporting me, others asking me to reconsider and try to make peace. But I knew there was no going back. I was finally free of that house, free of the lies and constant abuse. Now, I had a car, a safe place to stay, and the chance to start over without the burden of my own mother's betrayal weighing me down. I didn't regret anything. After I closed the door to my friend's house, I realized that the scene with my mom and stepfather wouldn't be the last. The hatred in their eyes, especially my stepfather's, told me he wouldn't rest until I paid for challenging them. But, to my surprise, the following days were filled with a strange silence. No messages, no attempts to find me. It seemed my mother finally understood that I wasn't coming back home, no matter how much she tried to manipulate me. The next week, I finally managed to put my life back in order. I had decided to stand firm in my decision to stay away from both of them. The freedom I felt living with my friend was something I never thought I could experience. Every day, I woke up without the burden of manipulation and the constant fear of losing my things to the thief in my own house. I used my new car to get to college, and it was an entirely different experience from before, without the stress of crowded buses or having to wake up before dawn. For the first time, my life seemed to be under my control. That's when I received a message from an unknown number, informing me that my mom and stepfather were selling the house and moving to another state. At first, I felt relieved. With them gone, it would be easier to move on with my life. But then, something ignited inside me. Were they really going to just start over, possibly with the money from selling the house, without ever facing the consequences of what they did to me? They were simply going to leave and forget the suffering they had caused? That thought burned inside me, and I knew that to truly move forward, I had to do something about it. I thought long and hard about how to do it without putting my own freedom at risk. I remembered one of the pieces of jewelry I had kept as a memento. It was a ring with a sapphire stone, something that, according to my mom, had belonged to my stepfather's grandmother. I decided that instead of just keeping it as a trophy of my small revenge, I could use it for something more. I contacted an appraiser, someone I knew wouldn't ask questions. The value of the ring was significant, much more than I had initially thought. I could have sold it, but I decided to use it in another way. With part of the money I had, I paid for the ring to be incredibly well reproduced, a forgery that only very trained eyes could distinguish. I kept the original with me and sent the replica to their house, along with a sarcastic letter saying that I was sorry for accidentally taking something so important. I knew my stepfather would believe it was the real one, and that thought made me smile. A few days later, they did move, and I heard nothing more from either of them. Meanwhile, I used the value of the original ring as a down payment on a small apartment of my own, close to the college. It wasn't luxurious, but it was my own space, far from all the bad memories of that house. I started working more to ensure I could afford the expenses, and little by little, I felt myself getting stronger, more independent. In this new chapter of my life, I made sure to cut all ties that still linked me to that toxic part of my family. I blocked my mom on all social media, changed my phone number, and made it clear to the few relatives who cared that I didn't want any further contact. The opinions were divided. Some understood me, others called me ungrateful. But that didn't matter to me anymore. I had spent years swallowing my pride and accepting being trampled on just to maintain the appearance of a united family. Now I was finally free to be whoever I wanted. As the months passed, I began to realize how much I had changed. I had new friends, was doing well in college, and even managed to get an internship that allowed me to work in my field. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I could finally breathe without fear. My friend, the one who took me in, ended up becoming my best friend and a brother by choice, someone I knew I could rely on no matter what. And from time to time, I would look at the sapphire ring. I didn't keep it on display. It was tucked away in a small box in the back of a cabinet. It wasn't meant to be a constant reminder of the suffering I had endured, but rather proof of what I had overcome, a testament to how I faced my demons and came out on top. The idea that my stepfather now had a fake replica and didn't even suspect it was just a bonus. I had won in a way he would never understand, by keeping my integrity while also taking something valuable from him that he would never get back. A few years passed, and I never heard from them again. The last news I got was by chance from a distant cousin who mentioned that they were having financial trouble. My stepfather had made some bad investments and lost much of the money from selling the house. I couldn't help but feel a bitter satisfaction. They were finally reaping what they had sown. Today, I live in a slightly bigger apartment, still in the same city. I graduated, found a stable job, and eventually even started to think about building my own family. Something I never thought I'd have the courage to do after everything I went through. And the sapphire ring is still there, stored in the back of the cabinet, not as a trophy of revenge, but as a symbol of overcoming. Every time I think about the choices I made, I know I did the right thing. I took my revenge, yes, but more importantly, I freed myself. And now, I can move on with my life, far from them, in peace.